you go.
Welcome to Cyber GPT Pulse podcast. I'm your host, Muhammad Ilyas Ahmed.
And I'm your co-host, Amiruddin Syed.
Today, we delve into the intricate world of geopolitics, security, and privacy. Joining us is a distinguished guest, Mathieu Gorge, a renowned authority in security and privacy, and the author of The Cyber Elephant in the Boardroom. So it's truly an honor to have you on the show, Mathieu. So your book has been making waves in the cybersecurity community, and we are eager to dive into the narrative you have crafted. But first, let's talk about your journey. What led you down the path of cybersecurity?
So, first of all, thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity. I got into cybersecurity by mistake. I was a French expat in Ireland, and one of my very first jobs was to sell TCP/IP training. For those of you who might remember what that is. And very quickly, I started selling content security and network security, and primarily looking at data security, which back 20 years ago was very novel. And it became a passion for me. And so after a few years, I decided that I wanted to start my own business around privacy training, which I did. And then very quickly, we got into security assessments. And in fact, my company, VigiTrust, we did about 15 years of being assessors and trainers. And about 5 years ago, we pivoted into governance risk compliance. And today we're an award-winning company for GRC, integrated risk management, with users in 120 countries. So I've had a very privileged professional and personal life, I guess, in that I've been traveling a lot and I've met a lot of people from all over the world who have their own issues with data privacy, with data culture, and so on, because it's different all over the world. The technical challenges might be the same, but the actual implementation of solutions is very different. And so there's not a day that goes by that I'm not learning.
Of course, certainly. So from your own experience, from moving from data security to data security, and then finally exploring the ways in security and privacy, I'm sure the journey would have been very interesting and with its own ups and downs. And because cybersecurity is always how we start, but it's the journey which comes around after it. So, do you like to share more about at what point you find out, okay, I want to author a book, or I'm looking to write something which I'm having from my professional experience, or maybe talking to someone else. So, what was the main motivation behind it?
It's interesting because when I started out, I was essentially reselling software and hardware around network and content security. And my own background is in marketing and languages. I don't have any technical background whatsoever. What I know about technology, I learned over the years, and I wouldn't claim to be super technical, but I understand enough that I understand what it means to a company to have a technical challenge and how to deal with it. So if you look at the evolution of the industry, we started by essentially having standalone computers, then network computers that were connected to the internet, then network computers that were connected to the internet with data that needed to be secured. That's when firewalls came out, and email content security, web content security, file integrity, and all of that good stuff came out. And as the industry went on, we started looking at, well, can I look at the traffic? Can I look at the behavior? Can I look at the users? Can I look at authentication? Can I look at the logs, and so on? And so it's been a very interesting journey seeing the challenges that companies and governments and citizens have, and trying to understand how to simplify that for them. So I set out on a mission to simplify cybersecurity and data privacy. That's really what I want to do. And I think part of the reason I might be good at it is because I'm not technical. I don't come at it from there's 7 layers and the data goes from A to B and Alice and Bob and all that good stuff. I understand it, but that's not the way I explain it, and I believe that if you want to have a good career in cybersecurity, you need to understand cybersecurity culture. So part of my journey was to understand that in today's workforce, you take any company, you might have people straight out of college and people that are nearing retirement, and they all have very different views on cybersecurity and privacy. And the reason for that is because some of them grew up with the internet and grew up with cell phones, and others grew up with wired phones where actually making a phone call was a privilege. And there was no worry about the privacy of the call because, first of all, very few people had access. And second, you were so busy trying to connect with people on a human level, you wouldn't actually share anything too private. So we're in a completely different world now. And I think that what's really interesting to me is to have been able to witness the move from individual computing to group computing to network computing to internet computing to today's world where we end up with AI and machine learning and blockchain and so on. And it's a super interesting journey.
Of course, that's correct. Right now, the security and privacy are on the rise where attackers compromise trusted vendors or service providers so they can infiltrate their targets. So organizations and individuals need to vet their suppliers carefully and maintain a robust security practices. To on the next question. So with your expertise, Mathieu, can you shed some light on an incident where you first felt overarching impact of global political tensions on cyber threats and privacy concerns?
So, it'd be very hard to share a client incident, but because of data privacy, ironically, but what I can tell you is that there are 4 bubbles of risks that any organization or government is up against. The first one is geopolitical risk, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. The second one is anything that has to do with contractual risk. So IP you acquire, IP you build, contracts with your employees, contracts with your suppliers, third parties, fourth parties, and so on. The next one is anything that has to do with your image. So damage to reputation, your brand, how your senior executives will talk to the press when there's a problem, and so on. And then finally, the 4th bubble, at the risk of offending technical people, is the easiest one to deal with. It's the technical cyber risk. Why is it the easiest one to deal with? It's because there are so many vendors out there and so many consultants that can bring you the right policies for the right environment using the right technology. The challenge is that most of them do not focus on your environment. They focus on selling what they do. So if I look at an example of geopolitical risk, I look at the annual risk report that the World Economic Forum is publishing every year in and around the first or second week in January. And generally speaking, they get it very right, except in 2022, the risk of a physical war was not in there. Generally speaking, they get it right though, and they got it nearly right 12 years out of 13. What they have done now is they have published what they call the Global Security Outlook report. And what the Global Security Outlook report from the World Economic Forum says is that attacks are moving from damage to reputation to disruption to your services. What they mean by that is that attacks are moving from making you look like a fool to making you act like a fool to some extent. And you lose your ability to do business. Colonial pipeline, the Health Executive Service in Ireland, where all of the hospitals went back to pen and paper. So this is all like disruption. What they're also saying is that the convergence between what the C-level folks are doing, the business people and the technical people are doing, is more and more obvious because of that geopolitical fragmentation. So they look at third-party supply chain. They look at dependencies. They look at your overall environment and so on. And so I think that the geopolitical current framework, where you have one country invading another one, where you have one country unfortunately launching a terrorist attack on another one and then being reduced to rubble by the victim of that very attack. You see all of those things. You might think they're all there in isolation, but they're not. What, you know, if you look at a report from CrowdStrike, and with no allegiance to CrowdStrike, but they published a very good report on all of the cyber attacks that were launched from Russia into Ukraine in the 9 months leading up to the physical attack. And they first started doing the defacing of websites, damage to reputation. Then they went into different things like attacks on critical infrastructure. And then it dropped. And then came the physical attack. And all of the countries that are openly supporting Ukraine have seen a rise in ransomware attacks that are attributed to Russia. We don't know exactly, but there's a likelihood. So you can see my point here that everything is interconnected. So you might think that a conflict that's happening 6,000 miles away from you has no impact on your cybersecurity, but it may well have.
Yep, certainly those are really, really good points. And being the globally connected world we are living in, with the network being so connected from one country to another, the nation actors are not only interested in to making some financial damage, they are more than happy for making a disruption. So the supply chain risks you have actually mentioned, those are very critical when a threat modeling or security architecture review has been done in any organization. And especially from the Ukraine point of view, my own organization suffered one of the attack because of its own allegiance. So this is another factor which need to be taken care of, which so these are really good points, which for anyone who is getting into cyber security need to look into. Just not getting into the theoretical point of view, you have to see what exactly is happening right now in geopolitical world. So from that point of view, in the corporate context, how should companies react or be prepared for not only for the geopolitical situation, but there are other situations like the international laws which are being changed, and incorporating AI safeties recently. Then this is another move. So, and also from the geopolitical landscape, the laws are not exactly same. So they are focused on protecting data and infrastructure, but how should companies navigate these things?
So I think that you raised a good point here. You know, there are, according to the Unified Compliance Framework, which provides like a mapping of regulations and standards and frameworks for cybersecurity and compliance and data privacy. There's about 4,500 of those texts that you need to be aware of worldwide. Now, of course, not all of them will apply to you, but it's definitely more than one, right? So it's not going to be just GDPR or HIPAA or PCI or ISO or CIS or whatever. So one of the things that we need to do as an industry is we need to simplify the message. I am blue in the face listening to people telling me, oh, but the board doesn't understand risk. That is utter nonsense. The board understands risks. They understand financial, HR, ESG, government, regulation, and so on. The problem that we have as an industry is we're not translating cyber risk into business impact. So until we manage to translate cyber risk into business impact, which basically means damage to reputation, loss of earnings, long-term costs, then we're never going to get anywhere. How do you do this? Well, you need to understand what I talk about in my book, The Cyber Elephant in the Boardroom, as the 5 stages of cyber grief. And the first stage is denial. So you go to the board and you say, hey, we want to talk to you about cybersecurity and compliance. And they're like, whoa, that's not my job. My job is to create value for the company. My job is to create jobs. My job is to pay tax. My job is to grow the company, generate profits for shareholders or whatever. It's not that. Then comes the anger. What, you again? Mathieu, we already told you to stop it. We given you money to buy firewalls, to go on training, to listen to podcasts, to hire a CISO, a head of compliance, a head of security. Go and talk to them. That's not our problem. Then comes the bargaining. And the bargaining is, well, we can see our competitors being attacked. We can see that the regulator is knocking at their door. So we're going to hire a very well-known company to do a 60-page document that says that we're doing something. They're not exactly sure what we're doing, but we mean well. And in 5 years' time, we might be in compliance. And that's kind of you're never really going to get away with that. Then comes the depression. Oh my God, we have been hacked. The regulator is in our lobby. They're asking to talk to our chairperson, to our CISO. What do we do? And eventually comes the acceptance. And the acceptance is, it's like death and taxes. We have to go through it. And we're probably doing 60 to 70% of what we need to do. Maybe not in a way that demonstrates that we're supposed to do what we're supposed to do will satisfy the regulator, but we are going the right direction. And then you can go from there, and that's the basis for a good continuous journey. Now, you've asked me about my own journey, which I suppose was probably my journey as an entrepreneur. Let's talk about the security journey. I'm going to tell you that security is a journey and not a destination. And if you need to remember one thing from my answers today is security is a journey, not a destination. It needs to be business as usual. It needs to be continuous. Why is that? It's because your ecosystem, your silos, your remote workforce, your third parties, fourth parties, companies you acquire, companies you sell, people that work for you, people that leave you, people that come in, that's all a moving thing. So your security posture is evolving all the time. So what you need to be able to do is to match that with the right policies, the right controls, the right tests, and so on and so on. So security is a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, that's thanks for bringing that the quote. It's really interesting, and then hopefully our listeners will take as important topic, like how they are getting to this in where the new the newbies are getting into cybersecurity industry. So yeah, that's really interesting. So let's shift our focus to the individual level. We're in a world where governmental interest in data seem to be ever expanding. So the average person often feels like a small fish in a vast digital ocean. So from your perspective, so how can individuals navigate these turbulent water to protect their personal privacy? So if you can share some insights or perhaps a story that illustrates a challenge that face the tools or strategies they can employ to maintain their digital autonomy in the current phase of governmental data interest.
The concept of digital autonomy is a bit of a myth for me. I actually don't think you can be in this digital world and be autonomous. I actually think it's next to impossible. And at the risk of being controversial, and I'm French and I'm a man, I'm normally controversial. I would say that you should have very little expectation of privacy. Once you're connected, you should just try and share as little as you can. And of course, you don't want to be in complete isolation. Otherwise, that defeats the whole purpose of that technology. But think about it today. Anybody listening to this podcast today, you have at least 2 or 3 connected devices with you right now. You've got a cell phone, you've got a connected watch, you might have a Fitbit, you might have a connected medical device, you definitely have a laptop or an iPad, and I'd say 2 is a very low number here. When you go home, you have 20 to 25 connected devices. So you've got the kids' devices that are connected, you've got the toys, you've got the kettle, you've got the coffee maker, you've got the air conditioning, and so on. And so you end up having your own infrastructure, and you need to decide, well, what is critical for me? As you look at critical infrastructure, we normally protect water, access to electricity, access to health, access to the military or the police, access to power, and so on and so on, where you should apply those principles at home. And actually serves a double purpose. If people do it diligently at home, they're going to do it diligently at work, and vice versa. And so I think that concept of personal critical infrastructure is going to grow. And you're going to have to decide what kind of data you want each of your personal critical assets to share with the rest of the world or not. And that's a personal decision. But by and large, it should be as little as possible.
Yep, well said there. As little as possible, because privacy is a myth now. So, in at the individual level, you can choose to what you want to share and as minimal as possible. But it's kind of a very overarching statement to make. But yeah, that's the only thing which individual need to take care. I can just add another thing that having so many smart devices, you can have those uh, automatically disabled after some time. Those can be maneuvered, but you have to have those technical capability for those settings. Not every individual is interested in those um, those um, uh, uh, changing those default settings. So yeah, that's so with the emerging technologies, as we are saying, that it's the the landscape of the devices which we are having is also changing. So also the geopolitical cyber risk. So what kind of roles you are seeing in future uh, can be or is still going on? Is it on the satisfactory level based on which the international cooperation is playing off to mitigate these large geopolitical cyber risk, or is there requirement of doing more?
Well, there's always a requirement to do more. I think there's good cooperation, international cooperation at the industry level. There's good cooperation, international cooperation from a sector perspective, like banking, healthcare, transportation, and so on. There's also reasonably good cooperation between law enforcement, and there's good cooperation between universities worldwide. Where there's not enough good cooperation is between universities, law enforcement, private industry, and private citizens, even at a national level. And I think that if you look at that idea of an ecosystem, what are we trying to protect? Well, trying to protect the way we live. So you get up in the morning, you want heat, you want water, you want food, you want protection, you want banking, you want access to the internet. So that's where the overall protection needs to come in, and then it needs to go horizontally and vertically and throughout, like this, all over the world. The one part that we're all worried about, obviously, is AI. And the reason for that is that AI is growing exponentially, but we are actually far away from completely autonomous devices that are going to make decisions themselves that might mimic human emotions, but we're not miles away from stuff that is completely automated. And so this year only, in 2023, 35 new security standards and regulations like the EU AI Act and others came out. And the way I look at it, as maybe I'm being naive, but like when I started in network security, there was about 100 security standards and regulations and so on. And now we're down to, okay, we have 4,500. I don't want to contradict myself, but the reality is they're all based on about 10, and I think that we're going to see the same with AI. I think we need to find what are the right governance principles that we need to look at. And so, I believe that there's a lot of good opportunities with AI. And I'm not talking about just about ChatGPT, which is just one small area within AI, but there's also good opportunities to be more aware of what's happening. So the challenge, though, is that the bad guys are using AI to make their attacks more efficient, but we, as the right guys, are also using AI. So it's a very interesting time for the industry.
Yep, of course, and with the AI, so there has been talk with the AI getting into GRC with governance and policy implementation through AI, but then the balancing act need to be done. How supervise those models will be, as well as what will be the data set, the evolving data set, how change management will be done there. So yeah, there are a lot of good questions need to be answered. So yeah.
So,
So if I can
Yeah,
bounce back on that, we were
Sure,
talking
sure.
about ecosystem earlier on. Which part of your ecosystem might be AI friendly, and which part of
Yeah.
your ecosystem should never be touching AI, or AI should never touch it? You can't, and I can't know that for you. You have to know your ecosystem, and then you have to be able to show me, and then I can ask you the right questions and say, well, are you really sure you want to put AI technology on this? It's far too sensitive. You also have to remember, and again, I may not be the most popular person after saying that, but AI is a narcissist. AI only thinks about itself. AI, you give him some information and it spits out information in a way that you can't recognize it, even though it's your own information. And then if you dare say, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't answer my question, like ChatGPT will tell you, well, you asked me the wrong question. So you can see where the parallel is going here. You can't win. You just can't win. And the problem with a CRM is you have garbage in, garbage out. With AI-based CRM, you have garbage in, 300 times garbage out.
Yeah.
And that garbage is then being fed to other AIs and to other people. And so it could exponentially go wrong. So you're right, we need the right safeguards. Do we know right now what those safeguards are? Well, I mean, we have 35 standards and regulations out there. They are going the right direction, but regulation and standards are always a little bit behind technology, And right now there's so much hype about AI, everybody's investing in it. So it's time to market versus security, which was exactly the same 10 years ago when you looked at connected devices. Time to market versus security. So is it history repeating itself? Maybe, maybe not. But if it is, it mightn't be as bad as what we think, because the reality is that by and large, everything is working. Yes, we are vulnerable, but we're all trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, there's certainly a quote came up all the way to my mind, like AI in cybersecurity is like having a highly trained guard dog, but sometimes it thinks the pizza delivery guy is a hacker.
Yeah.
That's how, yeah. So
and you guys were talking about data sets. I don't think we have enough data sets to understand the full challenge,
yeah,
And
certainly, yeah.
biasness, the data biasness is always there, as you were saying, the garbage in and garbage out, which we are experiencing, which with specifically with the LL model, and there has been talk with uh, going around for reinforcement learning, but yeah, that is totally another issue with AI safety, which we won't be able to manage there. So yeah,
And
that's
it's funny. the other day I was at home, and I rarely have a moment at home where I'm not traveling or I'm not working or whatever. And I was like, oh, I'm going to watch a movie, and the power of AI and the power of phones and devices pretending they're not listening, but they are listening. What comes up first on my movies you might want to watch? War Games from 1984 and Blade Runner 2049. All about AI.
Right.
And at that stage, you're kind of thinking, I really have no expectations of privacy whatsoever.
Correct. Certainly, when it comes to AI governance, I would say there are several key principles like to consider. First, so the first and foremost is the transparency. So, what I would say, we need a transparency in how AI system make decisions and what data they use and how they impact individuals and communities. The transparency helps that build trust in it. And the second, I would say, the fairness is crucial currently. So AI systems should not discriminate or reinforce bias against any group of people. So fairness principles should guide the design and deployment, deployment of AI. And
So I agree with you in principle, but the reality is that the AI models that we have today, or the LLMs that we have today, they act in a very narcissistic way. They behave for their own good. It's all about them. It's not actually about the output. And I think that that's where we need some serious safeguards.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's all about the reward it has been generated and the weight it need to adjust to get that reward. So of course the whole design of the model is narcissist. So that's why some other ways need to be look into if we are looking to rely on such a model without any human intersection there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's because of the AI is completely relying on the vast amount of data, and we must ensure that individuals are properly protected and privacy rights are respected to them. But when you go to ChatGPT and you put some chip in, all you get is hell lot of a bunch of data, but we don't know how they are managing the privacy. So the collaboration at global scale is essential again. So AI is a global phenomenon. I completely agree, but international cooperation is needed to address its challenges and ensure that it benefits the humanity as a whole.
Yeah, and you see the Cloud Security Alliance just launched an AI center. The IAPP just launched an AI working group. ISSA did the same. ENISA has an AI working group. And NIST produced a framework for AI. We're all trying to do it, but I think, as I said earlier on, they're all gonna more than likely converge. And then you'll see some very industry-specific AI guidance. But it's in the making.
Yeah, so I think those are the really good points to make, and if we want to further discuss into AI, I think it can be endless with various changes being going on from reinforcement learning to LLM and recent some changes to AI safety. But yeah, thank you for your invaluable insights, and it has been a profound discussion. I'm sure that our listeners will gain a lot from this episode, and it actually cover the complex intersection of geopolitics with security and privacy, and actually a bit of more here and there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thank you very much. It's been really fun. If I may, a shameless plug for the cyber elephant in the boardroom. I touch on AI a little bit, but right now I'm actually on the board of a couple of AI cybersecurity companies and pharmaceutical companies using AI to manage data and link the right consultants with the right patients. And I think that despite all the risks, it's very promising technology. And so we just need to look at it the same way as we looked at the internet, the same way as we looked at websites, as everything as a service. I wouldn't be surprised if there was AI as a service very soon. And so let's try and do it the right way. Collaboration, cooperation, understand it's a journey and not the destination. And we should be fine. I don't think the Terminator is just at the door right now.
Yeah, not Terminator, but I think it's a new. We are verge of the discovery of nuclear fusion reaction, and it can lead into atomic bomb or a a total unexplored way of energy generation. It depends on how the policies and action is being designed to take the right path here.
Absolutely.
All righty. Well, that's all for this week, and thanks for watching this episode, listeners. So the content information and the link to purchase the book is in the show notes. So if you have any questions, comments, or topic that you want us to discuss in the future, feel free to email us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.